Hello everyone, this is Adrienne Fraaza, and I'm going to share with you a little about how spirituality influences adult learning. First, let's talk about what we mean by spirituality. What does spirituality look like to you? Do you equate spirituality with religion? Are they interchangeable? Do you think it's the same thing? Maybe spirituality means or brings you peace. Do you think of your soul? Maybe it means connectedness, maybe to a higher power, to other people, or simply to the world around you. Is spirituality a practice of holiness? Or do you equate spirituality with flakiness and with people or practices that are out of touch with reality? Why is spirituality important in the context of adult learning? In this presentation, I'll discuss what spirituality is and isn't, ways that spirituality contributes to adult learning experiences, why spirituality is important to adult education, and what practices of spirituality look like in adult education. So, what is spirituality and how does it differ from religion? Defining spirituality is a nebulous task, but it is summed up simply by Tisdale. She explains that spirituality is more about an individual's personal experience with the sacred, which can be experienced anywhere, and religion is about an organized community of faith with an official creed, rules, and behavioral expectations. English describes it as an awareness of something greater than ourselves. Spirituality is also defined as a journey toward wholeness. Learners see spirituality as a means to becoming the person they want to be and achieving balance in the important areas of their lives. So really, it's a facilitator of identity development and transformational learning. All authors agreed that spirituality is a highly personal, highly individualized experience, and what affects someone in one way will affect another person in a different way. It is very subjective. Most researchers make a concerted effort to distinctly define religion and spirituality, with religion encompassing formalized organization. However, some scholars do use the terms interchangeably, and admittedly, there is a lot of gray area. One of the most significant ways spirituality influences adult learning is through identity development. As we move through stages of life, we progress through stages of identity development. We become more self-aware. We better understand what makes us tick. Some research suggests that adults become more spiritual as they age, and Tisdale says that identity development is about developing authenticity. In adult learning environments, we are challenged to think critically about how we are shaped by our culture. Meaningful learning experiences help us get in touch with our authentic selves. We get closer to answering the question of, who am I? And just to get into theory a little bit, James Fowler, a researcher who proposed a theory of faith development, tied spiritual and faith development strongly to cognitive and moral development. His theory was not without criticism, but it did get people to start thinking how faith and identity development were intertwined. There were then further studies on how spirituality influenced ongoing identity development among adults. Tisdale also did a lot of research on how spirituality impacts cultural identity among adult learners. As we mature, we begin to examine how culture is tied to our identity. We become aware of systems of oppression and privilege, and Tisdale describes this awareness as a spiritual process. It's an enlightenment, a revelation, and it takes our thinking beyond our own selves. Spirituality plays an important role in developing a positive cultural identity. So, a lot of identity development is a result of transformational learning experiences. And in my research, I found that spirituality significantly influences transformational learning. And then, transformational learning often influences social movements. Spirituality, transformational learning, and social change are all intimately connected. And some researchers argue that learning is more likely to be transformative if it has a spiritual component. John Dirks worked in conjunction with Jack Mesereau about transformational learning. While Mesereau takes the cognitive stance, Dirks advocates for the emotional elements and refers to transformational learning as, quote, soul work. He argued that adult learning occurs through the soul, that it contributes to the wholeness of our identity, and that it is necessary to nurture the soul in order to facilitate transformational learning experiences. Leona English suggests that spirituality and social change are integral to adult education. As I mentioned earlier, spirituality is an awareness of something greater than ourselves. When we begin focusing our thinking outward, we are moved to take action for social transformation. Peace. Peace is an important part of spirituality, and people advocate for social change in order to bring more peace to the world. A popular theme among transformational and spiritual learning is that it can galvanize adults to a better life. It can give us the grit to make difficult changes, shift our ways of thinking, and effectively deal with problems. Spirituality can influence powerful, transformative learning experiences for adult learners. Perhaps the most salient theme about spirituality is how it influences meaning-making in the context of adult learning. There is something about spirituality that enables meaning-making, something about being interconnected and understanding your place in the world. It helps adults construct knowledge in a learning situation. Adult learners grapple with searching for purpose and meaning-making out of their lives. Have you ever wondered what your purpose is? Integrating spirituality into learning experiences opens up an environment for learners to address questions about meaning and life's purpose. Another study found that spirituality positively influenced adults' levels of happiness, hope, and life's purpose and meaning. Meaning-making is highly individualistic, and it's up to the individual to decide whether or not an experience was spiritual and if it is going to contribute to his construction of meaning. So, how does meaning-making happen? Well, spiral learning is a way of revisiting past experiences that may have seemed insignificant at the time, but by reflecting on them at a later time and spiraling back, they discover and learn something new. When you go through an intense experience, it's sometimes necessary to take a few steps and, quote, let the dust settle. Later, when you reflect on it, there's more freedom to construct meaning out of it. Spiraling back experiences that are spiritual can lend themselves to a transformative nature. Educators also have the power to facilitate meaning-making among adult learners. Multiple studies discuss how by nurturing the heart and spirit of the learner, you are cultivating the space for them to feel safe and valued. This allows them to dig deep and engage in reflective practices. And here's a quote that I thought summed up the whole idea very well. As I mentioned earlier, spirituality can lead to social transformation. In the context of adult learning, this can be very powerful for the learner as he or she feels empowered to step into a social change movement. Holistic education and well-being are also a reflection of the influence of spirituality on adult education. Many researchers talked about educating the whole student, and part of that is attending to their hearts. A teacher who is aware of and makes a conscious effort to infuse spirituality into his or her teaching can have a deep impact on his or her learners. All of these aspects can be tied up together into what we know as well-being. And really, who doesn't want to live a life without positive well-being? And finally, goal attainment. Emmons discusses spiritual strivings and explains that when one is operating out of a spiritual framework, goals can take on a significance and power not found in secular strivings. So if adult learners are pursuing a goal, say completing a master's degree, and it has spiritual significance for them, they may be more likely to see those goals through instead of giving up. There is also a greater sense of meaningfulness and fulfillment regarding these spiritual strivings. Because spirituality is so personal, there is no one-size-fits-all. It's the responsibility of the educator to be in tune with his or her spirituality in order to nurture that in the students, and it's up to the learner to be committed to reflection and authenticity. But I did come across a few ways for the educator to create an environment that allows spirituality into this space. Above all, care for the heart along with the mind, and be willing to see them as a whole person. Encourage students to explore what brings them peace. Always promote reflection. Create a compassionate, comfortable, and judgment-free space that is edifying, which we already know is important to adult learning. Establish a lateral relationship. They don't need you to be in power. And it doesn't need to be explicit or showy. A lot of spirituality is infused in a very innate way. I was surprised at the depth of research I found about this topic. I mean, I know we have entire bookstores devoted to spiritual literature, but I had no idea there were so many scholarly articles about the idea of spirituality influencing adult education. To me, that means there's something to this. Even in a secular context, there is room for spirituality to thrive. Support for holistic education. It's so important for learners to be nurtured in their minds, bodies, and souls in order for them to thrive. I've had instructors and colleagues who've modeled this well as those who haven't. It all ties to well-being, and the spiritual component doesn't have to be overt. As I think about possibly teaching someday, this will definitely be something I will take with me. Learning the importance of nurturing one's soul in the educational setting, I will continue to find ways to value the students whom I supervise, because it really matters. And on a personal note, this really helped me connect the dots in my own faith walk. When things have been difficult in my job, I've often prayed for direction. During times when I felt like giving up, I've asked God if this is still what I'm supposed to be doing. And for now, it is. So I hope you have a greater awareness of the value of spirituality in adult education. And whether it is for you as a learner or you as a teacher, I hope you gained a few ideas of how this may be used in practice.